Hello, it's Victor here, and welcome to another video. This week we're going to be talking about how to build a budget, but not just how to build any budget, how to build a functional budget that you will actually use and that will actually help you save money and keep track of where your money is going. Remember, a budget is only any good if you actually use it. In this demonstration, I'm going to be using an Excel spreadsheet to kind of show how I lay out my budgets when I build them. So on the left-hand column here, we're going to spell out which months of the year we are going to be using this budget for so that we can keep track of our expenses by month. In this demonstration, I've assumed an annual take-home salary after taxes of about $36,000, which means that we'll be dealing with a budget of about $3,000 a month. First and foremost is going to be our savings column. We should always pay ourselves first before we're paying anyone else, which is why we're doing saving first. Then come our absolutely necessary expenses. This is rent, our car insurance or car payments if you have them, as well as our utility bills, so electric, water if you have gas. And lastly come the categories that we can really have a lot of control over month to month. So this is how much we're spending on food, gasoline, travel, donations, etc. If you have a very large category that you feel belongs in your budget, then please by all means put that in there. For me, these are kind of the overarching categories that go into my budget. Now we put savings first. You should always pay yourself first, but how much should you be paying yourself? That's a great question. I will make an entirely separate video dedicated to talking about the different ways you can save, what kinds of accounts you can and should have, and also about how much you should be putting into those accounts. The answer is however much you can. You should be saving as much money as possible. For this example, I've put $1,300 as our saving rate because that's a little bit more than 30%, which is pretty good. It's not the best you could be doing, but it's also a lot better than a lot of people out there. So, not bad. Now the next column is rent. Rent is highly variable depending on where you live, whether that's urban or suburban or rural, as well as if you live in a really expensive city like New York City or Los Angeles would be much more expensive than if you live kind of in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. The next column is auto. So into this column, I combine auto insurance as well as preventative maintenance. If you have an auto payment, you're paying off a car loan or you lease a car for some reason, first of all, those are both generally not good ideas that I would recommend against, but if for some reason that's the situation you were in, then this column is where you would track those payments. Next is utilities. Now, some people combine utilities all into one, but I like to break it out just so that I can see how each of my different types of utility bills fluctuate over the course of the year. Finally, we come to the categories where we have total control over how much we are spending. These are namely food, gasoline, and travel. Now, for me, my food budget includes grocery bills, eating out if I am going out to have drinks with coworkers or friends, as well as any miscellaneous purchases I might make at the supermarket. So for example, if for some reason my plunger breaks and I need to buy a new toilet plunger, that would go into my food budget for me for the month because it is where I capture those miscellaneous expenses. That's why my food budget is a little bit higher than maybe it needs to be, but it's still pretty reasonable. The next category is gasoline. Gasoline prices vary wildly over time and can also vary by locality. However, the single biggest factor in how much money you spend on gas is how much you drive. The farther you drive and the worse your car's gas mileage, the more you are going to pay on gasoline. Next, we go to travel. Now, you might think $200 is pretty small for a travel budget if you do any amount of traveling. You can barely get a plane ticket for that. Now, the way I view the travel budget is I am contributing $200 a month to a theoretical fund that is going to fund my travel whenever I do choose to travel. The final category I have on here is donations or charitable giving or whatever that may look like for you, just money that you are giving away. Alright, so now that we've set a budget on how much we want to be spending on these different categories over the course of a given month, now comes the fun part where we actually get to track how much we're spending on these different categories. So the savings category comes first because that is a sure thing every single time. We are always going to save, and we're always going to save that amount. So payday comes, bam, $13.20 in the bank. Now, rent or your housing payment is really a non-negotiable thing. You should always be paying your rent, I would hope. Then food, gas, and travel is where it really gets fun. So this is where I will log every single time I go to the grocery store, every single time I go out to eat, every time I go and buy drinks out, every time I buy gasoline. I will put the numbers in the appropriate corresponding categories to be able to track this over time. Fun fact, in Excel, if you click the equals button and then type in numbers, and then you type in plus signs between the numbers, it will automatically add those numbers together for you when you click enter. Now, this Excel spreadsheet is a living, breathing document. So every time you make a purchase, you should be entering that amount that you spent into the spreadsheet so that you can kind of see the aggregate of how much you've been spending over the course of the month. You might find it easier to just have a dedicated time where once a week you sit down and go through all of your receipts and enter in those numbers into the spreadsheet. For me, I'm a little bit more detail-oriented and a little bit more anxious about forgetting or missing something. And so I actually do this every single day if I went out and spent money. There are plenty of days that I spend no money, and that makes the job really easy for the day. Then we're going to come over to the end here, and I'm going to set up a formula that's going to calculate how much I spent over the course of the month, which is just going to be the sum of each of the categories. Finally, I'm going to calculate my net, whether I spent more than I made or if I spent less than I made. This is done by subtracting how much I spent from how much I made. If you want to get real fancy, you can conditional format that column and tell it to make red anything that is less than 0 and make green anything that is greater than 0. I would recommend this because the visual cue is really helpful. Over time, you may see your spending habits start to change. So let's say that you set this very lofty goal for yourself and you're aiming to only spend $100 on food in a month. You might find that in the first month you're spending $300, but then maybe the next month you only spend $200, and then maybe the month after that you're at your $100 target. And it can really help you visualize where your money is going and be that goal that you want to fit into. And that is how to make and manage a budget using an Excel spreadsheet. I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Using Excel to track my expenses and show me how much I'm spending and where I have room for improvement and also where I'm doing really well has been really helpful to me. So I hope that it's equally helpful to you. Thanks for watching. Bye!